Hello and welcome to the Chris Will Podcast on iCode Media. Today I had a great conversation with Dr. Jeff Hilovsky, who is an optometrist, but he's also retired from the military as a colonel and medical commander in the 512 Air Wing at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. And he's also running for State House in Delaware. It was a great conversation with Jeff. I really enjoyed his perspective on trying to figure out ways to articulate and understand people who don't necessarily agree with you, understand where they're coming from so we can kind of forge paths forward. So I really enjoyed our conversation. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. First time you and I had, I'll start it this way. I'll just say that the first time you and I talked, I was actually in the hospital. You might not know this, but I was in the hospital with my wife, and we had just had our, it would have been Mason. So we just had Mason, 2019. So she's our 3.5-year-old now. And I remember we had had it scheduled, and I was just playing with the idea of doing the podcast. And you know, what I typically do is if I'm good at anything, I'm good at consistency. I'm good at deciding I want to do something and then just following through with it. That's probably like my best attribute is like sticking to stuff. And so at the time I knew, like, if you would have asked me, like, am I going to be doing this in 4 years? I'd probably say, yeah, I'll be doing this in 4 years. But it's just weird because like the technology and the stuff that you do to change and what you learn, you know, I had no idea what I was doing when we talked last time. I was just recording whatever we'd have a conversation with. I'm still kind of doing that.
Well, that makes it fun.
Yeah, I think so.
It makes it fresh.
I think so. So today I want to talk about the MyDay multifocal for just a second. It has been a really great thing in our practice for our patients who are presbyopes of all areas, but you know, those tricky presbyopes are always the ones that are kind of emerging, where they don't want to give up any of their far away vision, but they're having some struggles up close. And so what the MyDay multifocal has been able to do for us is to allow those patients to transition into a multifocal more easily. And then as we have those patients progress into other levels where they need more ad powers, it's been a nice smooth transition. So the ultimate hurdle that we've seen in our practice before the MyDay multifocal was that we'd have patients who would resist any transition to a multifocal lens because of that distance blur. We just haven't seen that. So if you haven't started using MyDay multifocal in your practice, I would encourage you to start, check it out, reach out to your Cooper reps for those trial lenses, and commit to MyDay multifocal for your patients. I think they're going to like it. If you haven't checked out MacuHealth yet for your patients in Category 1 through Category 4, I think there's a lot of evidence that you should be considering. The first is, if we just look at AREDS 2 and what they talk about, MacuHealth is, so for patients in Category 3 and Category 4 AMD, MacuHealth is a great option for them that follows that entire protocol, and it also adds mesozeaxanthine to the mix, which, if you look at some of the evidence, I believe shows me that it's going to thicken the macular pigment better than without mesozeaxanthine. It also uses the correct AREDS 2 dose of zinc at 25 milligrams, and so you don't have to worry so much about the potential side effects of zinc. The other thing to think about, and it's beyond the scope of this, although you've probably heard me talk on other podcasts, is that in patients in Category 1 and 2, there may be some additional benefit to supplementing them with something that may be a little bit less than the AREDS 2, so you don't have to add as much to it. And that's where I use the MacuHealth LMZ3. And so I think if you haven't done this yet, I'd consider MacuHealth in your practice and for your patients. And it's been great for my patients, and we really feel like we can have the ability to help those patients in all categories of macular degeneration. So the reason I wanted to have you on today was mainly because, you know, I am excited for you. I want to hear about your campaign. You know, so for everybody that doesn't know, I'm going to you can go back and listen. I think it's probably episode 3 or 4, maybe 5 that of the entire show. And so they can kind of hear Dr. Hilovsky's background. Really, Jeff, what you were doing at the time, and I assume that you're still doing it, is helping with leadership with high school students. But you have this really extensive background in the military as well as optometry. And now your third career, maybe even fourth, is going to be politics. So politics is kind of a nasty business. Tell me why you want to be involved.
I was asked to do this because I am a frequent commenter on things that happen in our area. And so I will send out a blast email to 5 or 6 representatives that I know, and even some that I don't know. And I say, here's what my read on this is. And so then I research it a little bit, and I build a fact base for my opinion, and then I submit it. So the emails are usually long, and they're detailed. And so I sent out one about job creation, and I got a call back from a guy that I know. He's a state representative, and we talked for a while, and then he said, tomorrow, this is like in January, he said, tomorrow what's going to happen is you're going to be part of a new district. And, although I appreciate your emails and the depth at which you dive into things, I think it's time to put your money where your mouth is. And I still wasn't getting it. I said, so what do you mean? He said, well, you need to run for the office. I said, oh, no, I'm not going to do it. So he said, well, let's schedule another call. Think about it. Let's schedule another call. So 2 weeks later, he called again, and we had a very interesting conversation, and still wasn't sold. And I said, I'm going to think about this, but maybe I need to meet some other people and talk to them. So my wife and I had breakfast with a couple of other one senator and one representative, and that was neat. But really, when I decided to do this is whenever I was on the floor playing with my grandkids, and for some reason we were having a happy time, and laughing and giggling and whatever, and it hit me that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and more, when they're entering, age of reason and adulthood, they may have a dumpster fire train wreck of a society. And so, what is it that I could do? So, I don't want them to say, Grandpa, you were pretty vigorous at that age, and you were pretty smart, and how come you didn't do anything to help us? And now we have to deal with these problems that are almost insurmountable, and we don't have choices. And so I think everybody deserves to have choices. And if you don't have them, then you don't know what you don't know. But when you have them, you have an opportunity to have freedom and liberty. And so I said, okay, that's the deal. That was the linchpin that got me into this whole situation.
So the dumpster fire that you see, the potential for a dumpster fire that you see, run down, because again, I believe that most of our politics is local. So as we can kind of get focused on what's happening nationally, and that can be distracting to us. But then the real places we can affect change in a community, as you know, is by shrinking that sphere down and down and down and down. And so describe your community, specifically describe the situation in your state that you see as being the potential for dumpster fire-esque that you need to be able to shift now from. Describe that to us.
Well, I think that, you're right. Tip O'Neill said all politics is local. And so here we are. However, there are, bad policies or poorly thought out policies lead to bad outcomes. And there are several things here. For example, our schools. Delaware used to be ranked number 6 by whatever ranking that was, by whomever did the ranking, but it was 6th. And so the same people did the same ranking now, and 20 years later, we're 37th. How is that possible?
Delaware is an affluent state, isn't it? I always think of it as being a very affluent state. Is that not the case?
Well, I think, yeah, we have beach communities, which, there's multi-million-dollar homes along the ocean. There's multi-million-dollar homes slightly inland. There's a very strong agrarian economy. We have, we're a big poultry producer. We produced 221 million chickens last year. We do quite a bit to, feed the nation in that regard. In addition, we have 230 farms, and 42% of the land in Delaware, the land mass in Delaware, is agriculture. But something happened along the way to the school system. And so, for example, I present my leadership program as a complete volunteer in 3 high schools. The math competency in those high schools is the highest is 29%. And you just have to shake your head and say, what is going on here? The English language arts competency is 55%. And that's a head scratcher. You say, how is that possible? What did we do? Well, I think that we moved away from the 3 R's. When you concentrate on other stuff, you take away the benefit of solid math, solid reading, solid English, solid social studies, history, physics, and civics that is not being routinely taught. And I think that we've messed with the social media stuff, and there are influencers, both internal and external, that with screen time being so high with the children, and the problem with the nuclear family, and the some may say intentional destruction of the nuclear family for a lot of reasons. You have one-parent households, and there's like 17 million one-parent households in this country. And so if you have 17 million one-parent households, that means the mom, the dad, or whomever is guarding, or the guardian, is providing for that child, and providing for themselves and maybe other children. And so they're going paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. And so how is it that you can get ahead? Well, you get ahead by stopping the nonsense, and you say that there are reasons for actions, and if you can mitigate those reasons, and and it starts, in my opinion, with the schools. We are educating the next generation of leaders. Think about that. And so right now they have no say, they have no vote, they have no opinion. They show up, and what they expect is the leadership in the schools to do the right thing, and then the next right thing, and then the next right thing. And that's my definition for leadership. And when you have people concentrating on things other than, okay, we're going to take 15 minutes out of your math class and we're going to talk about some social issues. And that is pervasive, especially in the northern part of the state. And for example, the school administrator of the year has the worst school district in the state. Let's award that. That's like getting a trophy for showing up.
What's the rationale for that award then in what has been broadcast of why they win that award?
I think that is a homespun award, so that's within the education system, and so educators look at that, they decide it, and then they vote. And I guess it's obviously not based on performance, so it has to be based on something. And when you have maybe a lot of nothing and you reward that nothing, that perpetuates the nothing, right? If your lid is mediocre, then on your best day you're going to be mediocre. The culture for excellence is gone. Another example.
Well, I mean, to play into that point, I mean, I was listening to I don't know if you listen to Vinay Prasad. He's kind of, he's no question, he's a lefty, no question, but he's an oncologist, and I mean, he's great. It's definitely worth your time. He's a lefty, but he's very sane, right? From a standpoint of, he wants to know about evidence-based medicine. He wants to know how this applies to clinical practice, et cetera, et cetera. He's been, so my point is that what he was talking about recently was that something like 26 medical schools have completely waived the requirement of an MCAT to enter into medical school for certain populations that are, and I think about that. I'm like, well, if it's important, it's important. If it's not important, it's not important, right? If it's not important to creating good doctors who can pass their boards and get into residencies and perform well in residencies and just take care of patients, then it's not important. But to waive it because, I mean, it just seems like I had Adam Ramsey on in 2019, I think, and I had him on a couple times, and he didn't. I mean, I understand the goal. I understand the goal of increased diversity, and I agree with that goal. I think it's wonderful to have representation from the groups who are part of the population. Absolutely. And I think if I'm remembering our conversation correctly, he wasn't an advocate for reducing kind of standards of letting people in. But to your point, I think what this brings up is I think the overarching concern I have is, are we awarding things that aren't worthy of awards? Are we focusing on issues that we can't either control and really aren't that big of an issue for the sake of or in spite of the betterment of just kind of what you're talking about is the normal, like, okay, you show up on time, you get up, you work hard, you turn your tests in on time, or you turn your papers in on time, you study for a test, and that test is going to be graded. And if we don't do well on that test, then we're going to have some internal reflection, and there's going to be some pain. And I've seen this. I mean, I've seen this in men that I know very closely, that when you remove enough legitimate reward from their lives, and they never have to have legitimate wins, you steal their ability to be men. I don't know so much about women, right? I think it probably is the same thing for them as well. But like the men I see where they struggle to be men, or have in the past, it's because they have been stripped of their ability to win. And their wins are not real wins. Their wins are, they didn't really have to work for that. And they know it. They know they didn't. And then it robs them. It robs them of the ability to be the man, right? To be the man. And so anyway, that's a huge, I mean, we're kind of off topic, but I think we're really not, because I think what you're talking about is the ability to succeed. And there is this classic structure that does need to exist. It doesn't mean we can't talk about those things and get excited about them and, wanting to have a better society for more people. I would generally be classified by most people as a relatively, if not quite conservative person. But I want more people to rise up. I believe that more people can rise up. But I don't think that what we're doing, to your point, what we're doing is allowing people to rise up. And through the fire is how things are forged. And we're not allowing enough fires in controllable ways. We're allowing this just complete disorganization and saying, well, that's the fire. So we're going to, and you can't get out of that, but we're going to pull you out of it. And then you just don't have a win. Well,
I think, part of this goes to problem solving and those type of skills. And, if you have a predetermined outcome and you have distractors along the way, then you're going to be able to reach that predetermined outcome because the distractors are purposely in the way. And so I think that we need to...
I'm not that fast. Okay. Back up a little bit. Let me wrap my head around what you just said one more time. So say that again.
So if we have enough distractors, you have a predetermined, you have a goal.
Okay.
And the goal is set for this. And if you have enough distractors along the way, then you can control the outcome because of the distractors. But if the pathway is clear, if the highway is straight and long and wide, then you have an opportunity to achieve your goal in a much faster way. So I'm not saying that anybody is not working hard.
Agreed.
What I'm saying is that the focus has been shifted away from achievement and a culture of excellence to something less. And this goes not only in the schools, but Delaware used to be a big manufacturer. We had, I'll tell you about the email that I sent out in January. I was reading the Wall Street Journal. On page 2 of the Wall Street Journal, they said Tennessee, $141 billion worth of revenue per year because of their auto manufacturing. Well, Delaware used to manufacture Chryslers and they used to manufacture Corvettes and some pickup trucks. And now they manufacture zero. Why is that? Well, it's the choices, and this is going back to the why, the choices that the politicians have made to support certain groups that say, in order for us to work, we need this, and this. And that's it. That's the game changer. And the second policy that pushes that is energy. So Tennessee has reasonably inexpensive energy, and they have a workforce that says, you know what, if I could make $36 instead of $40, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be happy with $36 because that's still close to $100,000 a year with the benefits, and that pushes me over that. And where in Delaware, they'll say, nope, sorry for your luck, we're not going to do it, not going to consider it, see you later, bye. And that is because of local changes. And so our economy has suffered. Now we have a very vibrant, very bold service economy because of all the beach activities that we have here, especially in the county that I live in. But those jobs generally are not going to pay as much as a manufacturing position. And these are purposeful decisions. Another thing, we are about to become our state is going to become a zero net energy producer. Zero. No power generation. We're going to buy it from everybody else. We're going to buy it from Pennsylvania. We're going to buy it from Maryland. We're going to buy it from New York, New Jersey, wherever. And the problem with that is that when you have no control, then you have no control. And so, and this is not coming from me. This is just not making it up. These are policy decisions that I've been following, and they're just head scratchers. So you say, holy smokes, what is the goal here? But at the same time, our governor has signed like the 30th month in a row of an emergency situation here in Delaware due to COVID.
You're still in emergency. You're still in a COVID emergency.
We're still in a COVID emergency. Yeah. I mean, you just
have they put boundaries on why on when that emergency is no longer an emergency?
Well, that's the governor's prerogative, and one part of the state legislature is saying, come on, stop. And
but you're a blue state. You're a blue state, and from what I'm gathering, you're kind of you probably have an R behind your name. So tell me about what is the caucus going to look like if you're successful? What kind of impact do you have within the House? So right now, the House, how is it split up, and what's the anticipation if there is sort of a red wave based on kind of the national sense that everybody's getting right now? Tell me about that.
Well, the Senate in Delaware is supermajority, and the House needs to pick up 6 seats. So they don't have a supermajority in the House, but there is a majority, and so we need 6 seats to change the direction.
So wait, Republicans have a supermajority in the Senate now?
No,
the Democrats do.
Yes,
and the Democrats need 6 more seats to have
the Republicans need 6 seats in the House in order to
prevent a supermajority,
to stop the landslide, and really, there have been politicians just recently. The session ended on June 30, and they passed some very controversial and perhaps unconstitutional, many think unconstitutional bills, and their reaction was, "We don't care. We know that this is unconstitutional. Sue us."
And what's the pulse of Delawareans? Is that right?
Well, I'm in a primary, and so right now I've been campaigning to a very receptive audience. And so as I go door knocking and I talk about issues, there is a lot of just outright disappointment, and some things even stronger than that. They're just so. They just say, come on, we don't want to live in this environment where, everything is counter to what we believe in. And I like balance. I think that balance is good. And so there are some things that, the progressive side of nature, pushes society in one way. And then the people who are not progressive in that way, they say, well, wait a minute, can I challenge you on that? And so then where's that meet? It may be a little over here, but it's not over here. So we get closer to, where mainstream people say, I like this. And the same with the other side. Here we are way over here and say, man, well, we have to have this. And then somebody from this side says, well, wait a minute, let's talk about this. And unless you have that type of situation where there is willingness to talk, for example, they have a hearing, and for people who oppose some of the policies of the majority, they get 1 minute to speak. 1 minute. So you look at that and say, well, why even have a hearing? And in fact, it took almost, like an act of Congress for the legislature to actually start to have hearings again, because there was, some fear of, and it was virtual. Everything was virtual. And so, when you're not there, when you're not participating in the representative form of government,
so much easier to shut somebody off. I mean,
absolutely.
I think in some ways I've been able to have these conversations more frequently with people virtually, but I really like to people who are willing, who completely disagree with me. One of my most favorite things to do is to talk to them, and not to. I think there's this misconception of I ask a lot of questions when I talk to people that I disagree with. And it's not because I necessarily want to change their mind, although my sense is if I ask enough questions, then maybe they'll be thinking more like me if I ask the right questions. But really, I want to understand where they're coming from. And in a lot of cases, I wouldn't say my position is so much softened, but I gain so much more perspective, and it's just valuable to me. Like I know I could be wrong on a lot of the things I think. I probably am, but like it is, there is a truth, and then there's your perspective, and there's my perspective. And if we can't communicate about those perspectives because I draw a line in the sand and you draw a line in the sand, then we get nowhere, just what you're talking about. But if we can say, look, we know that there is a truth, a real truth, the real truth of something, and you come at it from one angle and I come at it from another, and we're both trying to get to what is the actual facts in this case, then that's, everybody wins, right? Everybody wins, because then we can walk away and say, look, yeah, okay, I might have been not thinking about this in all the ways that somebody else might think about it. And that's what you're describing. And we don't have much of that anymore. We don't.
Yeah. And I think that there are a lot of reasons for that, and I think that what we must decide is on an individual basis. All politics is local, and all decisions can be individual. And so when groups get together and they decide that this is the way it has to be and this is the way it's going to be, and the train leaves the station, and they're in the majority, well, then the train has left the station. So I think that there needs to be, a more balanced approach. And I think that, people have ideas, and they deserve to be heard. And those ideas need to be, then detailed. So I have an idea. Let's do this. Well, how are you going to support that? Okay, here's boom, 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 boom. Have you thought about this? To your point, have you thought about this? Huh. You know what? No. So let's now add this layer to it, or subtract a layer, because you know what, that may be objectionable to some people. So I think that reason is good, and we need to consider fact-based. And what we've found, just my research shows, is that unfortunately a lot of people remain uneducated as a choice. And they're very, very steadfast in their partisan belief, one way or the other, and they remain uneducated. And it's almost like, please don't confuse me with the facts, because I have an opinion, and my opinion is what guides my life, not the facts. And so empirical data then means less and less and less, and yet we're asked to lead and to make decisions based on the good for all people, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, but the good for all. And if it's based on your feeling versus fact-based reality, then I think that this is where we get into trouble. And so it's almost like everywhere you turn, going back to the farmers, we have so much agricultural land, and yet we know this is how it's going to affect the local level, is that fertilizer price has gone up 30%. Diesel fuel has gone up, $2 or $2.50 a gallon, depending upon where you live. And so when you still say, let's talk about farm prices. Let's go to the grocery store and figure it out. And I think that all those things have those poor policy decisions, start at the top, and when they filter their way down, who gets hurt and who's affected the most are the people who may need the resources the most.
Jeff, I want to ask you. So you brought up a couple issues. You and I have explored the school issue pretty much in depth. I think there's probably a lot of other ideas that you have, but I want to hear, so that people that might be listening that may want to support you. I want them to hear. Okay, you've identified a problem. You're going to be zero net energy in Delaware. Problem. That's what you're identifying. Solution, Jeff Hilovsky. What do you do to fix that? What's the main thrust that has to be done to fix that? How do you convey that message?
Well, we look for the reasons why at first, and on a first blush, on the first swash through this, it appears that the energy conservation decisions have been made, irrespective of the facts. And for example, there was a steel manufacturing plant in Delaware that left a number of years ago. Why did they leave? Carbon transfer. And so now they operate out of Saskatchewan.
Who wouldn't understand carbon transfer?
So there's that you can kind of say that you don't pollute if you if you produce so much carbon, and the carbon is too much for the atmosphere as defined by whoever makes those metrics, and they say, okay, this is too much for the atmosphere, and so you have to do something to
offset it,
stop that, and so they modified their plant, and it wasn't good enough, and so said, well, you know what, we're going to leave because now the cost of doing business here is too expensive. So they moved their factory to Saskatchewan, Canada. The carbon produced at the Saskatchewan, Canada plant is the same. And yet, who lost the jobs? So the net for Delaware is, yes, we cleaned up the atmosphere. We did. However, if you just go to Saskatchewan, Canada, they're the same emissions. And so, these type of policies make no sense. It's like lipstick on a pig. If you decide that you want to make a decision and make it better, then make it better. Make it better for everyone.
Okay.
Instead, you shift.
So I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you, Jeff. Okay. So decision was. So I'm gonna play the other side. Decision is we need to reduce our carbon emissions.
Mm-hmm.
So this company goes to try to comply. Well, they can't comply, and we're happy because now we were able to reduce carbon emissions. How do you come to the table to say, convince me that I can reduce carbon emissions and still not make it so onerous on this company so that they are going to leave? What is the middle ground here?
Well, I think we have to go back to the facts. And let's say that this company is going to stay in business somewhere, and it's going to go somewhere. And so then the realization is, okay, what is their net effect going to be? And how is it that we can work with this company to save the jobs? Let's say they had, and I don't know how many jobs they had, but let's say they had 100 people working there, maybe more, maybe less. And so there's 100 jobs. it creates this effect on the economy. And this effect is necessary in order to keep the neighborhoods viable, the schools viable, the churches, the small businesses, the everything, going. And when you take those 100 people out, and you take the maintenance workers, the people who then support the building structure of the plant, and then you take the mom and pop restaurants who provide lunch for the people who are at that, and you just eliminate all that, then you've deadened the economy. And so now the effect is here, and the carbon may be here. So if we look at that, is there a way then to look at all those facts and look at from the 30,000 foot view, and as you get closer and closer to the ground, you have now a 10,000 foot view, now you have 3,000 foot view, and now you're down on the ground and you say, okay, I think that maybe we can work this out here so that everybody wins. And so we keep the plant and we look at the science, and if the science is one-sided science, and we've had a history of that, and so if the science is one-sided, is there new technology? Think about this. In 2007, there was the first iPhone.
Right.
And where are we now? Right. Just a few years later, and we're looking at quantum computing. We're looking at, augmented reality and artificial intelligence. And so how is it that we can put that kind of thing to those pieces to work and strategize a way to figure out how can we keep this here and keep everything neutral. And my guess is that that wasn't done because the heels were dug in the sand and say we're going to keep this carbon level, and no matter Saskatchewan is west of Delaware, so the air is going to come west to east, right? So there you go, and it's the same air.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that. I think that I'll admit that I have to learn more about this. But that doesn't change my opinion on how the problem is solved. And that is you have a situation. We need all the available facts as much as we can get them. And then we need decision makers who are willing to say, you know what, let's do what's right for a while. Instead of what is expedient for the political process, let's do the right thing. And then the next right thing and the next right thing. And then when you get to that point, you have 100 jobs still in Delaware. And the next generation of workers are going to work in that plant. There's going to be 100 jobs, and maybe, gee whiz, they can expand that plant because they're adding value to their customers, and maybe now it's 125 jobs. Well, we've lost that opportunity. We've lost it with the Corvette plant. We lost it with the pickup truck plant. We lost it with the Chrysler plant. They're gone. They're gone. And yet other states say, I think there's a way that we can figure this out. Because there is manufacturing there, and we're losing it in droves. So that's a big issue.
So Jeff, I want to give you an opportunity. I think that you've outlined that well. I've already, as you're talking, I'm not going to provide solutions for what Delawareans should do, but I think there's a lot of room for give and take, and I would agree that the idea of having people from both sides represented enough where they have some skin of the game makes a lot of sense. I've always thought so. I mean, so tell our audience how they can support you, how they can learn more about you, and where they can find you.
Well, I have a website. It's www.vote4jeff.net, and you can reach me on Facebook at Vote04Jeff, and my email address is vote04jeff@gmail.com.
Dr. Jeff Hilovsky, thanks so much for coming on. This is a lot of fun. We're going to have to do it again, and I guess I'll see you soon in the next couple months.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for what you do, Chris. It's important. Keep doing it, and you're making an impact.
Thanks so much. It was awesome. Thanks, Jeff.